Testament's idea, for example, in the first chapter of John, of or actually the opening chapters of John altogether, of God coming down and overlapping with Jesus, or God being at once the Logos who is with God and thus separate from God, but is also God. That sounds like very strange language, but when you're familiar with the fluidity model from the ancient Near East, which some texts of the Hebrew Bible contain, I think that we realize that those sort of models you're getting in the New Testament are actually not new models in Judaism. This is a first century type of Judaism that is hearkening back to the fluidity model that ancient Israel had inherited from the ancient Near East. The idea of the Trinity, too, I think it's really a new way of repackaging the ancient Israelite fluidity model.
Right.
I think that that's interesting. And when I was writing the book, this was really quite surprising to me, because I think generally obviously Jews don't believe in the Trinity, of course. I don't believe in the Trinity. But Jews not only don't believe in the Trinity, I think Jewish philosophers and Jews just generally tend to think that the Trinity is a non-monotheistic model of God. I think a lot of Jews think of the idea of the Trinity as somebody's taking a polytheistic idea and sort of smushing it on top of a monotheistic foundation. And I think a lot of people would even say that the idea of the Trinity is maybe part of the Greek polytheistic heritage of Christianity, that in Christianity, you're sort of combining a Hebrew monotheism with a Hellenistic polytheism. And that the result is the idea of the Trinity already in early Christianity, maybe some of the ideas of incarnation and the idea of the Logos in the New Testament itself. But much to my own surprise, when I was writing this book, it occurred to me that, well, actually, the Trinity is a kind of fluidity model. It's the idea that one deity can have more than one manifestation, more than one aspect, more than one person. And if that's the case, then the Trinity is just a new way of utilizing a much more ancient theological model that was native to ancient Israel. And in fact, when you start thinking about it that way, this idea that three can be one, it's not so radically different from the Kabbalistic idea that there are 10 major manifestations of God in the created world, manifestations that are known as the Sfirot. And right. Kabbalah really emphasizes you shouldn't think of these 10 different Sfirot as different beings. You should never pray to one of these Sfirot by itself. These 10 Sfirot are all somehow one. But in the world, they appear to us as 10 different manifestations, but they're interacting. They come from a unity, and they ultimately achieve a unity in the long run. And even, again, on the Sabbath, they achieve a greater degree of unity. Well, if within Judaism there are Kabbalists who consider themselves monotheistic, who believe in 10 Sfirot, well, then I think that Jews have to realize that the Trinity, although we don't believe in the Trinity is based on a theological model that we also do see as present in Judaism. I think it's present in that something similar, not identical, but something analogous is happening in Kabbalah. And I think that when one goes back to JE texts in the Pentateuch and some other biblical texts, the idea that Shem and Kavod and Panim, God's name, God's presence, God's face, can act on their own, not merely on behalf of God, but as part of God. That idea is analogous to the Trinitarian idea that God can have more than one person. In other words, the Trinity is its own development, not simply of a Hellenistic polytheistic idea that's sort of grafted into a monotheistic Hebrew foundation or tree, if you will, that's actually something that grows out of the monotheistic tree or out of the monotheistic soil to begin with.